So we are recording and live.
Hi there, and good evening, everyone. We're in just a moment, we'll call this meeting of the Newburyport Historical Commission to order. We're going to allow them another minute or so for additional folks to join, either as attendees or panelists. We do have a quorum, but we want to give a little more time. Let's see, we've got now looks like everybody, but looks like we have a full house. Great. Okay, let's see how we're doing with attendees here. Hang on. Looks like we've got some attendees as well. All right, I think we can get started. So I will officially call this meeting to order of the Newburyport Historical Commission for the 27th of April, 2023. This is a virtual Zoom meeting, and like all such meetings, please be aware that it is being recorded. Per usual, we'll start with a roll call, and this is also a chance to make sure the commissioner's audio is working okay. So in alphabetical order, we've got Andrew Bernhardt.
Here.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. Biff Baus.
Here.
Okay, great, we hear you. Mark Syndrome.
Present.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Hearing you. Joe Morgan.
Here.
Okay, very good. And Chris Sautel.
Here.
Okay, very loud here. Okay, got you. And this is the chair, Glenn Richards, speaking. Okay, well, very good. And Christopher Fay is also a commissioner. He is absent tonight. Okay, so the usual routine applies. This is a familiar procedure by now, I think. Just commissioners will have audio enabled, and with representatives, either the applicant themselves or their representatives will speak. We have two major items on tonight's agenda. One is a demo delay application for 69 High Street. The other is an advisory report for the for DCOD, which I'll explain when we get down to that. The first thing will be the demo delay application. So this is at 69 High Street. I believe Mead, Tollerman, and Costa, represented by, I believe it's Lisa Mead. Will you be speaking tonight on behalf of the applicant, Ms. Mead?
Yes, sir, I will.
Okay, we can hear you. And I see Jeff Tucker also has audio enabled. So, you know, if necessary, he can speak as well. So this is a demo delay application, the usual thing. We've been through several of these recently, so I don't think I need to review all the gory details yet again. We used the flow chart we usually use. Now, Ms. Mead, I got the impression from your memo that you wouldn't be particularly shocked or surprised if we voted it historically significant and considered for preservation. Would I be correct in that?
Yes, sir, that would be correct. We have no doubt that this house is historically significant and should be considered for preservation.
Okay, well, that's good. But nonetheless, would you like to say a few words regarding that part of the deliberation, but that part of the decision making?
I think so, and I think the reason is that I think it's good information to have.
Okay.
I think that some of my maps and the Sanborn maps are important, so I'll quickly go through that.
Okay.
For the record, Mr. Chair, Lisa Mead, Tellerman, Costa, 30 Green Street, on behalf of Sarah and Travis Sumner, who are the owners of the property. With me, as you indicated a little bit ago, is Jeff Tucker, who's the architect on this project. And my colleague, Ben Taylor, is also here this evening. If you can go to the first slide, please. So the Sarah and Travis proposed to remove a lean-to porch roof that is on the rear of the home and construct a one-story addition. This property was constructed, the existing single-family home was constructed around 1856, according to the assessor's records, and 1865, according to the district data sheets. At some point in time in the last, 25 or 30 years, this was also used as a two-family structure, and Jeff is going to talk a little bit about that. The property does include a Form B. The property also includes a two-story barn and a shed on it. The home is a federal style structure. The property at 69 High Street was created in its current configuration in 1897. Prior to that creation of this plan, there was a deed from Ebenezer Wheelwright in 1855. In 1881, Sarah Wheelwright conveyed it to Marion Barron. And in 1897, Maria Barron conveyed it to Miriam Thurlow. It's in the Barron to Thurlow deed that the phrase "with the buildings thereon" is included. However, it's not clear which buildings were included because, of course, prior to that, the property had been in a different configuration, but everybody has dated it somewhere between 1856 and 1865. You can go to the next slide.
Was this part of that wheelwright property? I noticed it's just a couple doors down from the wheelwright house.
I think that it was, Mr. Chair, and the issue is the wheelwright property also, went out back a significant distance, and so maybe a portion of it was there, but there were a number of wheelwrights,
okay.
not just William and Mrs. Wheelwright of the more infamous fame, but obviously there was Ebenezer and Sarah Wheelwright. So there were a number of Wheelwright members to the family.
Thank you.
So this is the 1906 deed. So you can see the house. We did go back because we weren't really sure about the age of this roof, but there is kind of a porch roof, and I want to say it's open because of the dashed line that's in back. The Sanborn maps were interesting how they classified different things, but you'll see there's that dashed line at the rear left side of the house. Next slide, please. In 1914, that dash line still exists, and we believe that to be potentially the lean-to-ish porch roof, which you'll see in the photographs. Next slide, please. Then in the 1924 assessor's map, this is a little further away, but that doesn't appear to be there, but the assessor's maps aren't as clear as the Sanborn maps. And then it appears again, though, in the 1960 assessor's field card. So we were going to err on the side of it being a historic roof in the back. Slide, please. And so most of you are familiar with this structure. It's at the top of Federal Street. And here's the front view of it. Next slide. Nothing's going to change on this view. Next slide. And here's the right side corner view of the structure. Again, nothing's going to change on this view. Next slide, please. Here's the rear. And if you could blow that up just a little bit, Caitlin, you can see on the right side of this photograph, you can see that porch roof that's kind of being held up by a pole in the middle, sagging. That's the roof that is going to be removed. Next slide, please.
Okay.
And then this is just another view of it. Did you have a question, Mr. Chair?
It can wait, no problem.
Okay. So this is just another view of it. And in that area is where the addition is proposed to be constructed, and it's a one-story addition. With that, I will, and if you go to the next slide, please, we'll let the board make a determination of historical significance.
All right, thank you, Attorney Mead. Well, panel, does anyone have a comment? I think this is a pretty familiar structure in town. I don't think this decision will be too terribly controversial, but I don't want to be accused of having undue sway. So at this point, either a question or a comment would be in order, or a motion to move that the structure is historically significant and considered for preservation.
Just one comment.
Yeah, sure.
This is a federal style building. It's actually a Georgian style building.
Yeah, thank you. That was Mark Cendron, right?
Yes.
Yeah. It's interesting. I think it sort of has some elements of both, but yeah, it's certainly not a clean federal style. True. And
we took the classification off of the Form B, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, I understand. I don't think we're not really faulting you for that. I don't think, Attorney Mead, just trying to, whatever.
Yep.
Okay. Any other comment or motion?
I'll make a motion to determine that this structure is historically significant.
Would you historically significant and to be considered for preservation, Mark? Or
Indeed.
okay.
Indeed.
All right. So the motion is the structure is historically significant and should be considered for preservation. Is there a second?
I will second it, Andrew.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. Okay, so we'll go around the house here for the vote. Andrew, your vote on that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Biff Bouse?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Mark Syndrome?
Yes.
Thank you. Joe Morgan?
Yes.
Thank you. Chris Sautel?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And the chair agrees. And let me just do one thing here real quick. Okay, so that is done. Now, so with the board moves on to the demolition plan review, which is where we take a look at your plans to what you want to demolish and what you want to build in its place. We usually start with comments from you, that would be Attorney Mead and architect, either or both, and then we'll have Q&A, public comment, and so on. So Attorney Mead, you want to take the floor again?
Sure. Thank you very much. If you could go to the next slide, please. So the proposal, as I suggested during the initial review, is to remove the rear lean-to roof that certainly appears to be more than 75 years old and in poor condition, and to construct a one-story addition with a larger footprint in its place with a terrace on top. As you'll see shortly in the site plans, this appropriately steps in from the edges and corner of the existing structure, so you can see it's clearly delineated from the original structure. The proposed addition will remain subservient to the house. It's both shorter in height as well as stepped in. The design matches and includes detail compatible with the existing structure, and will not change the facade or certainly the public visibility of the structure whatsoever. Next slide, please. I will note, and we can go over these in a minute, we did submit new plans to you in the middle of the week because there were a couple of minor adjustments to the window and a rear elevation second story window, which we just wanted to be clear on. So Jeff will go over that in a minute. If you could go to the next slide, please, Caitlin. So this is just a site plan of the entire piece of property. So you can see how it goes to the back and runs down towards Oak Hill Cemetery. Next slide, please. And this is a little closer view. If you could blow that up a little bit, please, Caitlin. And I'm just presuming it's Caitlin. I don't know, maybe it's Andy, so I apologize.
No, it's Caitlin, I believe.
Okay. So you can see from this slide that, and if you have the site plan on your own computer, that addition in the back does step in from the corner of the original structure and wraps around the back of the house. And so with that, if you go to the next slide, Caitlin, I'm going to turn this over to Jeff Tucker, who's the architect, to go through the architectural items.
Hello, everyone. This is Jeff Tucker of Tucker Architecture in Marblehead, Mass. One of your folks here just pointed out earlier that this is Georgian. We agree. The owner also is emphatic about it as well. She's very well versed in historic architecture. She's restored a home already on Lime Street previously, and is absolutely in love with this house and every little detail of it. So we are certainly looking to respect the architecture that is there, while at the same time trying to kind of make a little bit more of the rear facade here. So this the front facade that faces High Street, as you're seeing in this shot, this is the existing. If you flip to the next one, it is identical. This is the proposed. There are no changes planned for this, right? It's an absolutely beautiful facade. It's got coins in the corner. It's got a lot of kind of great Georgian detailing, and the proposal is to leave this intact. If you can go to the next slide, please. This is the right side. So if you're familiar with the property, the driveway goes up on the right side of the house from the street. This is that side. You'll see a kind of vestigial entrance right there in the middle. All of that is remaining, as you see in here. It's really toward the rear part of this, where what looks like an addition, though, that was likely original. You'll notice that there's 3 windows and there's one missing. One of the proposals here is to add a window back into that missing spot, because the interior of the house, we're changing to a point where we have the opportunity to put a window back in there. It's likely that the original didn't have that opportunity. Maybe there was a closet there or something. So again, we would like to kind of restore what we think maybe would have been intended originally, even if it wasn't done. So if you go to the next slide, you'll see that added window there, right? So the 4 windows on that piece. That addition, if you were to look closely at the detailing and photographs, you'll notice that it is also a subservient building to the main box. The siding is different. The siding is more clapboard. The trim is simpler. The corner boards is simpler. They're not coins. So in many ways, what we're going to be doing for the rear, or what we would like to propose for the rear, is in keeping with what this does. Again, subservient to the main box. You can also see in this slide to the right, you can see a little peek of what we're proposing. So it's a little 1-story addition off the back. The reason for this addition is that, as Lisa stated earlier, this had been used as a 2-family home at some point a while back. And as a result, the layout and portion of the interior of the house was corrupted, right? It didn't kind of follow suit to what had historically been there. Our hope is to construct a new kitchen and other living spaces to kind of unwind some of that. However, we do need additional space to do that. If you can go to the next slide, please. This is
Mr.
Yes.
Okay, I'll maybe wait till the end. Yeah, I was just curious. You used the term vestigial door there on that view, that elevation we were just looking at. I was just wondering what you meant by that.
Just that it seems that somebody was using that as, in fact, actually on the interior of the house, as we've been playing with this, it appears as another kind of main entrance. There's an entrance there with a side stair. So the vestigial just meaning it was a vestige of another use in time.
Oh, I see. Okay, didn't mean like no longer used type of thing.
No, it is absolutely used.
And is that right just to the right of it, toward the rear of the house? Is that there's a little doohickey of some sort?
Yeah.
Is that what is that?
It's funny. So with that, if you can zoom in on that, I'm glad you saw that. That was actually something our owner pointed back out to us. We use a LiDAR scanner to scan our buildings.
Mhm.
And it was something when we were putting the building together and putting the facade together, it's essentially digitally put together with a laser. We missed this. It's actually it's existing. It is a tiny little oval window into a powder room. And it's tucked behind a shutter. It's planned to stay. I at first thought it was a mistake. I thought one of the guys that was drawing that, I was like, no, you missed a piece there. But that is in fact there and is planned to remain. It kind of tucks behind a shutter.
All right, thank you. Sorry for the interruption.
Oh, no worries. If we can go to the next one. This is the rear of the house. And as Lisa described before, there's kind of a sad lean-to porch there on the right. And even the detailing, there's just what looks like 4x4s that are peeling and rotting, a sagging porch there. No real detail of any sort, right? This was a kind of use-driven little shed porch off the back. The hope is to remove that. So that is the roof change that we're requesting, and then infill a portion of this corner with the 1-story addition. If you can go to the next slide. This is the proposed 1-story addition. So this is the piece that's coming out towards you. It has a roof terrace on top, and you'll notice some French doors beyond that, where we'd be removing the 2 windows that are outlined in red. And then if you can kind of zoom in a little bit, right there we go. You'll also notice that the 2 windows on the left on the 2nd story that have shutters on them, you'll notice that there's red boxes of where those exist today. The hope is to recenter those in those volumes. Again, we suspect that the interior layout of this subservient volume historically had precluded putting those actually on center. The new layout on the inside will allow us to center those, and so we would love to put those back in the center. You'll notice a balustrade and other detailing here. The proposal is that the siding for the new addition would match the existing. If you can go to the next slide, please. And then this is the side that faces opposite the driveway side, where we had what I described as a vestigial opening. You'll see actually kind of at the center of this one is a round bay. It's quite beautiful and detailed nicely. All of that stays. The main box is untouched by this. And you'll see toward the left of that, where the coins are, you'll notice to the left of that is where this kind of shallow roofed shed porch that really doesn't seem to have much value in terms of Georgian detailing or that type of thing sits. Beyond that, you will see the subservient, what I call an addition, but it's not, but the subservient part of the building in the distance there. If you can go to the next slide, please. And here's what we would like to propose. So down at the bottom, you'll notice that a set of steps are descending into grade. The basement area does not have a second mains out, and it's a substantial space. We'd like to correct that by adding essentially a well that's open to the sky so we can get a door and windows down there. You'll notice a chimney in the foreground, and then this addition that is to the left. As Lisa noted, that addition steps away from us by a foot. As a technique that I'm sure you're well aware of, is to respect the existing structure by placing something that is adjacent to but not in line with the existing facade. You'll notice that there's, if you can zoom in a little bit here, might help. We've got these guardrails that go around as a balustrade, as well as in this area here where it swoops up. Those are our roof terrace panels that are again acting as guardrails there. And if you can go to the next one, we actually to create these drawings, we use a model. We thought it might be helpful to see some of this in 3D. So this is roughly from that same angle, that same facade. You'll see off on the right that bay that sticks out. And again, this roof terrace and rear addition. And you'll notice in this shot that it does step in from that corner, respecting the existing corner there. If you can go to the next shot, please. This is from straight on the rear. And then there should be one more shot off to the left. There we go. And this, yeah, the shot off to the left, and it shows that fourth window that we'd be adding on that second floor. Can I answer any questions?
Yeah, I just have one real quick, then I'll ask my colleagues here. Caitlin, could you go back one slide to 24, please? Mr. Tucker, that little, it's almost like a bay window, but it's on the second floor, part of the rear addition. It's like a three-sided, not sure what to call it.
Correct.
That appears to be unchanged from the original. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so that was there, that is there now, and basically isn't being changed other than maybe repainting and so on.
Exactly.
Okay. All right, so let me turn to my panelists here. Does anyone have a question or clarification of that for the Mr. Tucker, the architect? And if not, we'll have a public comment period per requirement for this. Okay, not seeing any hands or anything. Oh, I do see a hand. Okay, yes, Mark, did you want to have a question or
Mark
comment?
Chandron, question regarding the bump out. Is the bump out felt to be original, contemporary to the house, or is this a later addition?
You mean the piece to the left that I've been describing?
Correct.
We believe that it's actually original to the house. I kept looking at it, kind of speculating that it might be an addition, but in talks with the owner and also as verified by those Sanborn maps, it appears that would be original.
Another question is, why do you feel that you need to expand the addition over onto the bump out?
Why do we need the addition to the right there?
Yeah, so if you look at the bump out, it seems as though the addition encroaches onto the volume of the bump out.
So if the bump out is the turret piece that your chair was speaking about before, if you were to go,
Jeff.
yes,
Jeff, that's not actually the question. The question is, why does the addition wrap around the later? No, I'm not going to say later added, but the smaller original addition in the back.
yes,
I think that, Mark, correct us if I'm wrong. I think when you're talking about the bump out, you mean that's two-story addition to the rear, correct?
Right, that's what I mean.
got it, understood.
And Attorney Mead is correct. I'm asking why it wraps around and extends over onto that.
Right.
We actually played with this a couple of different ways, and it was felt that this version resolved better than previous versions that we had looked at. So it coming around both accommodated the space that we're looking for on the interior, but it also allowed us to return it back to that building rather than come into the side of it. Coming into the side of it did not work well for our layout. And again, we did not like the way it resolved into the building.
And finally, what is the purpose of the chimney?
The chimney is a fireplace that serves the space down below.
Okay, so that room with the three large French doors, there's a fireplace in there?
There is.
Okay, and this wraparound that we've just been talking about, I assume that's looks like it's maybe, I don't know, 3 feet or so, like behind what looks like more French doors that are to the left of this rendering?
Yeah, I think it's probably 3 or 4 feet. I know that we have a
Yeah.
door going in that side, so I bet it's something closer to 3, 6, or 4 feet.
Okay. Okay, anybody else have a question? All right, then let's, thank you, Mark, for that. I will open a public comment period to see if anyone has a public comment regarding this for our consideration. If you do, what you need to do is use the controls in the Zoom meeting to, quote, raise your hand, virtually, of course. So find the Zoom controls for that. If you're on a phone, I believe it's *9, if I'm not mistaken. Let me see. Yeah, *9 to raise or lower your hand. And there's a *6, which you would use to mute and unmute you if you're on a phone. At any rate, we will, once we recognize you, you'll hear us recognize you, and then we'll unmute you on our end. You will also have to unmute your audio on your end. So I'll officially open that, and we'll see if anyone has a comment. And if not, we'll go back to our previously scheduled programming. So far, I'm not seeing any hands. Oh, I do see a hand raised. So I'll recognize Stephanie Nikitish. Caitlin, can you enable her audio on our end? There you go. So did you have a comment?
I really had a question more than a comment at this point. Stephanie Nikitich, 93 High Street. What is the footprint of the addition?
In terms of size?
Yes, yeah, but how many square feet is the addition? So that's one question. And the second question is the space in the basement, is it going to be living space?
So I'll answer your second question first. The space in the basement is storage.
Okay.
Yeah, those windows are to bring light down there, and we have a door to get down there. But again, the existing house only has one means to get to that basement. And technically by code, you're supposed to have 2. So it would be a bulkhead or something like that. We
Right.
felt that this was a more appropriate way to treat this. The square footage of the addition is approximately 800 square feet.
So that's, I'm asking because the deck on top is going to be quite large, and I know, I've talked to someone who's concerned about it, and a butter. I was hoping he would be on the call tonight.
Okay. Well, there'll be another opportunity if a comment like that wants to be made, because I believe, Attorney Mead, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you'll also need to go before the ZBA for some zoning questions.
That's correct. We do have to go to the ZBA for a special permit for nonconformities, and I was remiss. It's a good time. We do have a letter of support from 71 High Street. I believe we filed with the commission and also with the ZBA, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Which side is 71
That would be
relative to?
on the right side,
Oh, okay.
opposite the addition.
Right. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Actually, I'm aware of the ZBA hearing, and I think a lot of the questions really are more in the realm of the ZBA, not the NHC. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks very much. Let's see. I don't see any other hands at the moment. So I'll go ahead and close the public comment period officially and turn back to our panelists here. What I usually do is just go around the panel here. I'll just in relatively random order. Let's see, how about Biff, any thoughts or comments regarding the demo / rebuild plan? Our next,
Sure.
what we'll have to do next is decide if the place is considered for preservation, which, excuse me, is preferably preserved, correct myself there, and which would impose a demo delay, but we can then take an additional vote if we so choose to approve these particular plans or suggest modifications. So anyway, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sure. I think my overall reaction. So I guess I do have one maybe question just to make sure that I'm saying this correctly. Currently, or previously, this home was a multifamily home. Well, originally a single family, and it was multifamily, but it's changing back to a single family, correct?
Right, and not multifamily, but a two-family.
Two
And-
family, yeah.
Right,
Right.
and but it hasn't been a two-family for a few years for sure.
Okay.
So, but
Okay.
it sat empty for a while.
Right. Okay. I asked that just because it seems to me that, I mean, the house is already, I would say, fairly large. And if it was successfully used for two families, and now we're going to one family, I feel like the interior changes that could be made could easily accommodate a single family and what's needed in there. Is that historic opinion? No, but I think again, to me, we've run across this several times where in my opinion, it's like you get into these homes and you buy this historic home and it's built a certain way, and to add these fairly large structures, I mean, there's homes smaller than this footprint is being added, to add that to an already existingly house that has probably everything that could be needed in it. I just that part I feel it's a little troublesome to me. Again, I don't know if that's in our purview, but I mean, for me, I feel pretty passionate about it, and I just feel like adding onto all these structures that are already beyond a lot of folks' means is pretty detrimental to our community. And I don't understand the reasoning behind it, I guess. And I get, you want a modern kitchen, you want all these things, but it's like, that's not what this home is. If you need a modern kitchen, if you need these modern amenities, maybe a modern home design is better for that, purpose. I also just feel like we've been easily adding on to, like, well, anything that's on the back of a home, nobody else sees, so it's kind of okay. I just wonder about that. I mean, it's like, well, just because we aren't privileged enough to see it, that's why we can't change it. That's I think my biggest objection to it. I mean, I think it looks nice. I mean, I would love to have it. But I just don't, I'm having a real tough time understanding the need for it.
Mr. Chair, if I could address that, please.
Okay, I was going to make a comment about our purview and so forth. Can I do that real quick
Yeah,
first, and then
absolutely. You might
Okay,
take the words right out of my mouth.
Okay. And what I was going to say is that as you hinted, Biff, you're right that some of those concerns aren't really part of our purview. So what is? And what the easiest, simplest, most or least verbose way I could put it is that our job is to, first of all, adhere to the Secretary of Interior standards for historic preservation and renovation and so on. So the bottom line is to try to avoid changes to a structure that we've already determined is historically significant and considered for preservation. So, at this point, that's a given. We would not want to have anything done to it that would have a negative or adverse impact on its historic value as a historic structure in whatever way. We've come across, as far as size, technically it while just say, oh, it doesn't seem like you need that much room. Well, that's really not something that that we could make a defensible decision around. However, if there was if we determined that the size of an addition that someone was making was such that it was overwhelming the original structure, or not subordinate to it, and so, and those kinds of things, which are part of the
Right.
standards, that would be a little different.
But-
So I just wanted to
and
get that out there. Yeah, go ahead.
And I think too that it's that my point was that if this was on the front of the building, we would be, oh God, no,
Mhm.
right? But this is on the back of the building, and it's more likely or not going to be allowed.
Mhm.
And so I just wonder about that.
Okay.
You know, I mean,
Yep.
it's a giant change to this house, right? I mean, that's I think pretty irrefutable, and it's not to the original. I mean, it's borrowing styles, and it's obviously added on and all of that. But does it, does it fit along with the original intent and design of the building? That would be my issue with it, I guess.
Okay. So Attorney Mead, did you still want to comment to that?
I do, just a little bit, and I think that as far as, first of all, I was remiss in saying that we do have a letter of support from 67 Rear High Street as well, which is the house that's probably the closest in the rear to this corner where this is proposed, and that letter of support has been submitted as well. But in addition, I think you did say, there are different criteria for different boards and commissions in the city. And while I certainly hear what the member is saying, the Secretary of the Interior standards are what are at play here. And the question is it subservient? Does it complement and not take away from? And if it were to be removed in the future, would the original box, if you will, be restored? And the answer would be yes. So I think that those are the criteria. If you have a question or concern about density, that's a zoning issue. And this is far from exceeding or even coming close to even the minimum requirements under the zoning ordinance. So I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, I think under the zoning ordinance, I mean, it's going to be, you've got a giant lot, right? And I know there's big setbacks in the rear of a lot of these properties, but what my point is that 800 or 900 square feet is like an additional home for a lot of folks. And this thing was built with this, with a style and intent. And this is almost like adding another small home to the back of it. And
Well,
historically, I can say that wouldn't be appropriate.
Well,
whether or not.
I don't know that that's the case at all. And quite frankly, the size of the addition as compared to the original structure, or because it may be bigger than other homes in the city, is not the criteria.
Okay, well,
Okay.
I still think that, I have the right to voice my opinion about this, and that's my opinion.
Okay, and if it should turn out that at the end of this whole discussion that these plans are approved without alteration or whatever, I would certainly encourage you to raise some of those concerns at the ZBA for their consideration, where they can take into consideration things like the density and
I will. Yeah,
some of that stuff. All right. Well, thank you, Beth. How about Chris Sautel? Any thoughts from you?
Yeah, thank you very much. This is certainly a lot to consider. I kind of side with Biff on that too when it comes to additions. That's not to say that it's that all additions are bad, because historically additions were put on as families grew and whatnot. Like the first period houses grew into salt boxes that grew into Georgians that and whatnot. So I understand that there is a need for additions. And this one looks like it would be added on shortly after the house was built, from what I can see in the 3D drawing here. But yeah, there's just a lot to think about. It's
Okay.
yeah.
All right. And by the way, I go kind of around the group here. The intention is not to put anybody in the spot or anything. You know, if it's just to make sure that everyone has had a chance to, excuse me, everyone's had a chance to, you know, express their point of view. I want to make sure that, you know, people are involved in the proceedings. Andrew, any thoughts you'd like to
I'm
contribute?
fine with the changes.
Okay.
I'm okay with it.
Okay. How about Joe Morgan? How about you?
Yeah, I'm perfectly. I have no comments on the design for the addition. I thought it was interesting, Mark's question about Georgian versus federal, so I did a quick Google search because I don't really know the difference, but it sounds like from what I just read that Georgian and federal, the styles were pretty much that the period styles were over by 1830. So this is really a revival style of one or the other. And the generic term is really a colonial. So I would call it a colonial revival. It's of the style, but it's certainly not of the period, Georgian period.
Yeah, it's funny, Joe. I almost commented on that as saying maybe we should call it a Georgian revival for that very reason. It's clearly not from the original Georgian period, which is what, or something like mid
Gothic
18th century.
Gothic revival this is the period of Gothic revival.
Yeah.
For some reason, the builder of this and the owner were more interested in sort of a revivalist colonial idiom here. So that's perfectly fine.
And it's
some of the details of the addition I don't think really are appropriate, but I don't think it really matters. You can't see it from the street. No one can see it from the street. And my God, there's acres and acres of land behind it. Actually, I have a question. How many acres does this house sit on there? Just out of curiosity.
Sure. I think it's 2.97 acres.
And what's the HSR requirement? HSRB?
Yeah, let me pull this is the A, Joe. It's a larger requirement.
This is A, okay.
Yeah, so it's got the larger requirement. Hang on. Caitlin, can you go to the site plan? I think we have the table on there. So there you go, 60,000, and this is 129. So 2.97 acres is about right. Yep.
So it's acre and a half is required by that's the zoning requirement.
Right. Right.
Yeah. I don't, and you know, unless they were to sell half of the lot and build something else on it at the rear. I mean, you know, who's ever going to see that? You know, no.
Right. Well, you'd be happy to know that there's actually, when this transaction occurred, there is a private preservation restriction that's been put on the rear part of the property that can't be developed.
I see.
Oh, really? That's interesting. Held by who? Who's grantee on that, Attorney Mead?
The grantor into this is the holder of that restriction.
Interesting. Okay.
What does that mean? Out of curiosity?
So the person who sold it was the grantor, and these folks, the Sumners, are the grantee, and the grantor put a restriction on it.
I see. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Who did I miss? Let's see. Biff, Joe, Mark.
And
Mark.
that was obviously mutually negotiated. It wouldn't have happened without it, obviously.
Right. Yeah, I think there are also some zoning restrictions about on High Street in particular. There's some, don't quote me on this, but there's some High Street overlay with rear setbacks that are crazy big and so on. You're probably more familiar with than I am.
Well, it's a 300-foot setback, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah, that must be it.
Correct.
Okay, I wanted to get to I didn't hear from someone. Chris, I see your hand up. Did you want to make another comment, Chris?
Yeah, this is just a comment going back to what revival this house was, whether it was Georgian or Federalist. And I was curious, the construction is this a post and beam construction? Does anybody know?
Jeff, do you know?
I don't. I've been all through the house. I know that there's evidence of trusses in the attic, but a lot of it is also stick built. So I know that there was a time, periods of time where the kind of two quote unquote technologies overlapped.
Yeah.
And that might be the case here. So there are some substantial timbers upstairs, but I would not call it a post and beam.
Yeah, it wouldn't be, maybe it's right at that transition point time, in terms of time wise, Chris, as you probably know. So it may have elements of both, you know, you'd have to, you know, get in there behind and do, I don't know, some sort of investigation. So who did I miss? Joe, Chris?
This is
Biff?
Travis Sumner. I'm the owner of the property, and we
Yep.
have found that it does appear to be a post and beam house.
Ah, interesting. Okay. Yeah, which so maybe it's on the earlier side of the various build dates that were mentioned, and you know, closer to 1850. I think they were still doing timber frame at that point. Mark, is that your hand up?
Indeed. Yeah. While I totally agree with Joe Morgan about the fact that this is not going to be really visible in the back, I do think that the chimney is so prominent that it will be visible from the street. I don't think the chimney really fits into the whole design, while it may be kind of set up in continuation with the other chimneys on the side. That seems like a massive piece of masonry that is not in the same proportions as the other chimneys. So I think that to me is not something that I would want to see on this kind of a house. And in addition, I do kind of agree with the size of the whole construction. I think if it stayed within the limits of how that extra area that comes out, that would probably be reasonable. I find that it is a little bit jarring to see how it sticks out and kind of sticks onto the bump out there. To me, aesthetically, it's not that pleasing. Again, who's going to see it? Probably nobody, but the chimney is going to be visible from the street. So I really do object to that chimney.
Yeah, Caitlin, could you go back to 23, please?
Right.
So this, yeah, there's a better view of that chimney. It's interesting you should bring that up, Mark, because I noticed that, and maybe the architect can speak to this, that they put a detail on the top of the chimney that the other chimneys do not have. So is there something behind that?
No, the other chimneys actually have additional detail, which has not been modeled. When we modeled this one, the idea was to run coursings and that type of thing that would, have a level of detail similar to the other chimneys.
Perhaps we could go to the front elevation for a minute, Caitlin. So, and that maybe the next slide. So here's the front elevation proposed, Mr. Sendron. And so you don't see the chimney in the front elevation.
So I would submit that, yes, from the straight on, you can't see it, but from the side as you walk by, you will definitely see it.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. Go to the side elevation. Let's see what happens here. I think.
Oh, the other side, yeah. Yeah.
There you go.
So I think it's Mr. Tucker. So are you, so I understand correctly, are you saying that the existing chimneys have a top that, in other words, let me ask a question this way. Is the way the chimney terminates at the top going to look the same as the existing ones, or is it going to have this different kind of bulge thing going on?
It's intended to have it's intended to be consistent with the existing facade. And if you take a look at the photographs at the very beginning of our presentation, that'll probably give you some sense of it. That was actually because of their height and also because of how this sits on land. We had trouble picking some of that up with our lasers. So I think the photograph is probably the best tell. If you look at number 7, you'll probably see it, and 6. If you notice those kind of corbel out.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah, they do flare out.
One thing, by the way, this is actually a perfect slide here. And if we had one that went further left, which I don't think we do, I'm also a landscape architect. There's a substantial amount of evergreen vegetation on the left-hand part of the property. There's a mix of arborvitae and yews and other evergreens over here that do a fair amount of screening. And that combined with the elevation change from the street to the house do a pretty good job screening anything that we're really going to do out back. I respect the comment, but I also know that there's a fair amount of vegetation that is evergreen that's going to do a fair amount of screening.
Right. Yeah, and there's about roughly how from the sidewalk to the first floor level of the house, that's what would you say? It's maybe about 12 or so feet or even more?
I think it's more. Travis might be able to comment on that. He's the owner.
Yeah.
He probably walks it every day.
I think it's probably a little bit more than 12 feet.
Yeah. Okay. And I have a question that's relevant to almost nothing, but I'm just dying to know. Those front windows on the first floor go quite low. I'm just wondering what they look like on the inside. Do they go almost to the floor on the interior?
They go maybe only about 2 or 3 inches off of the floor, and they're true triple hung windows.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Okay, great. Yeah, you got quite a gem there.
We did, yes.
Thank you.
Yep. Well, and it sounds like you are appreciating it, so that you've heard the comments from the board here. I think there's, some concern about the extent of the additional space you want to put on. I understand it. I think it's very, it's not atypical of what people do, especially when you're looking at a large lot at a prestigious address, High Street in Newburyport. You're an exalted company there. There's a certain expectation, and probably I can certainly see you wanting to replace that rather the poor condition porch thing, whatever it is in the back, with something that's going to improve. Yeah, thank you. Something that's going to improve the overall view of things.
We are, and we do appreciate the comments by the board. We've certainly, looked at this house as a historic house and have been treating it that way. And what we've done so far, and the other houses that we've done at Newburyport over the last 20 years. So we're very cognizant of, what these houses are and what they were. And our intent is to return it to, what it has been in the past. And this is just a piece of that as we feel it.
And
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to throw one other thing in there, and I think I'd asked Sarah to say something. So part of the reason, and we've talked about this on a couple of other homes that additions have been put on that required demolition delay. Part of the reason that Travis and Sarah would like to construct this new space is so that they can leave intact some of the more historic areas and spaces inside without, totally demoing them to accommodate what would be in a more appropriate living area for today's standards. So Sarah, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, absolutely. That is entirely the reason that we are doing this. Well, also because we do have this beautiful piece of property, and we want, as you can see, this is a great image to illustrate it. We don't have a great interplay with our yard, with this beautiful yard that we are really leaving as natural and beautiful as it can be up here. So there's the piece of it where we'd like to use this space, this single story, to sort of be able to bring the outdoors a little bit more in with glass and push us out into our yard a bit. But more than that, there's not another space in the house. If we are to get a space like this to allow almost like a great room space in this house, we would really have to compromise something that already exists. And we really cannot bring ourselves to do it. The beautiful grand hallway down the whole center of the house that's 8 feet for the most part is not a functional living space. It's really designed with a stair in the middle, the good morning staircase, that breaks up the rooms a lot. And we don't want to we would never touch any of that. We care so much, and we're so excited about the way that it looks. So this room is just sort of letting us do a lot of living in one space and still leave the other spaces really, as they were meant, and leave our beautiful center hall
Yeah. Did I understand you correctly? That center hallway is about 8 feet wide?
That's correct.
Yeah. Well, I can sympathize. Mine's only 6 feet, but I completely understand what the problems that poses. Anyway, well, I'm glad you brought that up, both Attorney Mead and the owner there, because for me, that's actually a pretty significant argument. Technically, we have no say over interior, so we can't approve or disapprove. Like if you wanted to gut the interior, we couldn't say no, right? As I'm sure maybe you guys all know. But the fact that I totally know from I think everyone on the board understands that a house of this vintage is going to have room layouts and sizes and things that don't necessarily accommodate themselves to, particularly contemporary kitchens and that sort of thing. And so the fact of, or that to have the motivation be, hey, let's preserve and protect the beautiful historic features and not have to tear out wonderful molding and all that good stuff in order to, update the house. To me, anyway, that is an interesting argument, and I appreciate you bringing that to our attention. Okay, so any panel, I think we're ready to take a vote, and unless anyone have any other questions or comments, we need to vote on whether the structure is preferably preserved. So this motion would be that the structure is preferably preserved. That would impose a demolition delay. So depending on if that motion is passed, then the demo delay is imposed, at which point there are a number of there's some options we can take at that point, versus, for example, we could accept these plans, we could suggest alternate plans and so on. As Attorney Mead is very familiar, oftentimes there might be some minor changes that can be made to make the plans that might be considered improvements to the plan or whatever. I don't want to get overly predictive here. So anyway, but that's what we need to do next. So unless anyone has anything urgent, can someone propose the motion that the structure is preferably preserved?
I will present the motion that's preferably preserved. Andrew.
Okay, so the motion as the structure is preferably preserved, which a yes vote would mean yes, it is preferably preserved, and would impose the demo delay. A no vote would be it is not, and there is no demo delay. Is there a second for the motion?
Seconded.
Okay, thank you, Joe Morgan. So going around, Andrew, your vote?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Biff Baus.
Yes.
Thank you. Mark Sandrone.
Yes.
Thank you. Joe Morgan.
Yes.
Thank you. Chris Sautel.
Yes.
Okay, and there's no longer any suspense because it's already enough votes to pass, but I'm in favor as well. So that's unanimously approved. So as I'm sure as Attorney Mead well knows that right now anyway, there's the 12-month clock starts ticking on a demolition delay. So what's the feeling of the board here? We could take a vote on a motion to accept the plans as presented, or if someone has a strenuous objection to the plan, they could suggest that make some suggested change. Biff, I see your hand up. You have something to say?
Yeah, I would just like to thank the owners for explaining the kind of an intent on what the addition is. That I agree that is very helpful, and like you said, the fact that we can't make any suggestions or whatever about the interior of the home, it's nice to know that's the intent of this. I think hearing that, I think my only concern at this point would be I do think the chimney will be prominent addition, and mainly because when I'm looking at them now, the other chimneys are going into the roof, and you don't see the whole vertical brick all extending all the way to the ground, which I think does make it much more prominent structure. I think if, and I know that's a big change, and it isn't a neat looking thing, but I do think that is probably to me would be kind of I don't know how to say a deal breaker, but I think a concerning part of this structure if we were to go forward with it.
Yep. And I should mention, and don't misinterpret this, I'm not necessarily encouraging it, but I would be remiss not to mention that we have the ability to ask the owners if they would permit a site visit by the board, so we could see they could show us firsthand, where the change, where this thing would be built, how it would affect what's there today, how it might not affect it. And so if there are questions that that the board feels could only be answered by a site visit, that at least is within the possibility. But I'll just mention that. I'm not suggesting that we need to do it, just that it is a possible thing.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
I would make the following suggestion, and maybe if the board found it that they would lift the delay, that they could make this a condition. The architect indicates, as do the owners, that they could absorb the base of the chimney into the structure. And so you wouldn't have that bottom part exposed, which was what the comment just was.
Yes, in other words, it would be it would look more like the existing chimneys that are basically interior chimneys, except to where they pass through the roof and so on.
Correct.
Okay. Well, thank you for having that quick consultation. Well, this design on the fly, so to speak. All right. So why don't I suggest that we could hear a motion to accept these plans to lift the demo delay with the condition that the additional chimney that is proposed to be constructed on the new addition not be an exterior chimney as it's shown in the renderings and drawings here, but an interior chimney similar to the ones that exist in the house today. So you would not see that full height of the masonry on the exterior and so on. Mark, did you have something to say? I saw a hand go up. Oh, I think you're muted, Mark. Hello, Mark. Mark, we can't hear you.
Sorry about that.
Okay.
So I would suggest that we also request that the chimney would be in the same proportions as the other chimneys, so that we have some architectural consistency in the way the chimneys are set up.
So I think that's a code issue, and I'm going to let Jeff address that related to wood burning chimneys under today's code. Maybe that's why it has the size that it does. Jeff?
Yeah, that's correct. So we do need to follow current codes for where the flues are in here. So I think maybe a more achievable solution here would be to replicate within the within the guides of code the detailing and size of those other chimneys. In other words, adapt them to modern code.
So I know obviously you haven't fully worked this out. We're talking on the fly here. Is it your impression that you could at least get close to the profile of the existing chimneys? What do you have, 2 flues in there, I assume?
We
Or
do.
Just one?
We have
Huh?
2. We have
Yeah.
2.
So where's the second fireplace?
It's up on the. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, so it's about you've got the fireplace on that porch level, and you need to have enough clearance above that. Is really what's dictating the code height. Is that correct?
Yeah, and there's also the draw. So that modern code requires us to have the outlet for the exhaust to be a certain distance from a roof, and then some, right? So
Right.
Within 10 feet, it has to be 2 feet above. At the same time, we're also concerned about draw. So we wanted to make sure that it was high enough that it's clear of this. What's working to our benefit is that we have a hip roof. But I mean, the ideal would be that we got it all the way up to where the very top of the main box roof is. Obviously, that is something that we didn't want to compromise in terms of it makes sense. So this
Sure.
seemed to be a decent compromise to get both draw and also dress code.
Okay, so there are two fireboxes or fireplaces, one
are.
in the new great room and one on the deck.
On the roof terrace, yes.
Okay. By the way, it's been my experience that you'll find that by moving the chimney to the interior, because the masonry mass will be a bit warmer, that will improve the draft right there. I know I've got a tremendous draft because of interior
That's true.
chimneys. Okay. All right. So let's see if we can neatly incorporate this into a. Hang on a second here. Let me get my notes together. Find my cursor and all that good stuff. Okay. So. Sounds like they're willing to make some changes to within what's permissible by codes to meet the objection about the chimney, which I understand. So let's see if we can formulate that as a motion to accept the plans as presented with the condition that the new chimney be constructed so that it is interior in the sense that the first floor, for example, you'll see the clapboards on the outside, not the masonry mass. So you'll start to see masonry above that level of the roof deck. And the size of it in terms of its overall massing will be as close as possible within the code requirements to be as similar as possible to the existing chimneys. Does that sound fair?
Yes, sir.
The chimney will terminate at the, I think that'd be more succinct to what you were saying.
I didn't mention specifically the height. I think the height is going to be.
Well, no, I mean, where
sorry.
will the exterior, where the exterior portion will end at that level.
Exterior portion will end at
Yes.
that
So, I believe what Biff is saying is that the chimney will be absorbed into the structure for the full building part and will then be exposed above the terrace.
Is that what you meant, Biff?
Yeah. So the exterior of the brick will terminate at the roof of that first level.
Right. At the first floor level, you'll see clapboards and stuff, not masonry. Correct.
Sorry, I was trying to make that less wordy.
Yep.
Anyway,
Okay,
we
yes.
got there.
Sorry. Okay. So, sorry, Gretchen, but that is the motion, hopefully. And in my notes, I'll try to make that perfectly clear. I'll go ahead and make the motion. And I'll try to state it as cleanly as possible. The motion is to accept the plans as presented with the condition that the new chimney proposed in the rear addition shall be an interior chimney, meaning the first floor level will be inside, and so the exterior will be clapboards, etc. And above the roof of that level, in other words, at the roof deck level and above, that's where you'd see the masonry, and the overall size of it would be as close as reasonably possible to the existing ones, consistent with the current fire codes and so on. All right, so that's the motion. Is there a second for that?
I'll second that. This is Biff.
Okay, thanks, Biff. Okay, hopefully everyone understands that. So we're all clear. A yes vote on this motion means that they can proceed with the plans with that change that we just discussed to the chimney. A no vote would mean that the plan is rejected and the demo delay continues in effect. Okay, so Mr. Bernhardt, your vote on that.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Biff Baus?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Mark Syndrome?
I'll be a no because I would hope that the footprint would be reduced.
Okay. Joe Morgan?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. Mr. Sautel, Chris Sautel?
That's a yes.
Okay. Okay, and the chair is okay with that too. So that leaves 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 affirmative votes. So that motion does carry. So thank you all for your time. Ms. Mead, I'm sure you'll be around. I believe we have you on the next item. But for the owners and architects for this particular property, I want to appreciate your time very much. Thank you for your comments and everything else. And I wish you luck with your new home.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Okay, the second item on the agenda is an advisory review. I should probably just briefly go over this because there's some, I'm not sure, there are some new members and some members may not have been through one of these. So 6 Pine Street, again, will be represented by attorney Lisa Mead. And I believe Scott Brown, the architect, is here, and George Hazeltine, I believe, is the developer. At any rate, we have a structure in the decut zone or overlay, and the amount of demolition is over 25%. That, therefore, they require a special permit from the Zoning Board of Appeals. They are the permit granting authority in this case. So the ZBA needs to be convinced that they should be granted a special permit to demolish that extent of the structure to build this new addition. So this isn't a case where we, have the, have to vote on whether it's historically significant and so on and so forth. At least that's not my understanding. So what does come out of it is that we, and by we generally means me, writes a advisory report that goes to the Zoning Board of Appeals, reflecting our opinion as a historical commission on the historical attributes or nature or features or values of the structure, and what, if any, adverse impact this plan might have on it. So I hope that's pretty clear. As we mentioned briefly a little while ago, it's the basic standards are the same in terms of the Secretary of Interior standards for in this case, it's really more of a rehabilitation and so forth. So some of those same concerns are there. So we want to know, we want to advise the Zoning Board of Appeals as to whether or not we think that historical values will be significantly adversely impacted or not. So after that, hopefully not too long-winded introduction, Attorney Mead, did you want to address us with about this project?
I sure do. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And for the record, Lisa Mead, Tellerman Costa, 30 Green Street in Newburyport. I'm here with Scott Brown and my colleague Ben Taylor. And as you noted, I am here with Mr. Hazeltine, who is the current owner of the property. However, the proposal is for the buyers of the property, which is Kendra and Neil Kincherf. And so they, I believe, might be on as well. As you said, we're here for the DCOD historical report for this property located at 6 Pine Street. If you go to the next slide, please. And as the chair indicated, the DCOD provides that there's an advisory report from the Historic Commission regarding the significance of the structure and relative importance of the structure in the context of the block where it is located. Here, we're proposing renovations to the structure in addition to be constructing on this existing single-family home, the proposed construction of a garage at the rear of the property. The proposed renovations and additions will remove and or cover up 42.9% of the exterior walls of the structure, and that's why we're here to talk to you tonight. If you could go to the next slide, please. So the existing structure, which you'll see momentarily, was constructed in or around 1850, according to the district data sheets, where it is listed as contributory, and 1900, according to the assessor's records. Excuse me, there is no Form B for the structure. And if you could go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So in the 1906 and 1914 Sanborn maps, you'll see that the structure actually includes a singular rectangular box. And so this is the 1906 map, and you see where the circle is on Pine Street. There is a singular rectangular box and no addition to the rear or to the side. And the next slide, please. And here is the same thing in 1914. At some point in time after 1924, if you go to the next slide, please, for the 1924 assessor's map, and it's in the highlighted one almost right in the center, and it's still a singular rectangular box. It's sometime after 1924, the rear and side addition were added over a crawl space. And so interestingly, and Scott can go into the construction a little bit in a minute. Much of what is proposed to be removed are these additions that were put on sometime after 1924. As part of the renovation, the proposal is to remove, as I said, those additions and cover up some of the walls. The existing home includes 882 square feet of area, and the proposed structure will include 1,642 square feet, which is still quite a modest structure, and one of the smallest, and still will be one of the smallest, if not the smallest on the block for sure. We did provide a current conditions report from an engineer, Mr. Michael Perham. Noted the foundation was CMU block walls that was built without any sill or untreated joists that bear directly on the CMU block. The foundation is of unknown depth, and underpinning will probably be required if it were required to be saved. Left and right exterior walls are possibly supported by 4-inch brick veneer. And overall, they said with respect to the walls that are proposed to be removed on the existing rear addition, it's neither economically feasible nor practical to retain and repair the existing walls and foundation, so they can support new loads on a second floor above. And with that, I'm going to go to the next slide, which are the demolition slides, so you can see what's remaining and what's being covered up and or removed. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Scott.
Oh, thank you, Lisa. Scott Brown, the architect for the project. Could we just scroll forward to slide number 10, please? Excellent, thank you. So this is the existing house as seen from the front left corner, driveway on the left. The first thing that you'll notice here is that, the entire house is covered in vinyl siding. The second thing that you might notice is that there are vinyl replacement windows here as well. They're the type of windows which are inserts which sit inside the existing frames. And as a result, these sort of appear a lot smaller than what would have been there in 1850. A lot of the older detail has long been stripped away. All of the eaves are covered in vinyl. The old historic sills are covered in vinyl as well. In this photo in the back left-hand corner, these are the later, post-1924 additions that Attorney Mead spoke of. They are ad hoc in nature, poorly constructed, have a very questionable foundation. I would not be surprised if those foundations supporting that are not even at frost depth. And I use the word additions plural because I think there's two additions back there. And, if we were to zoom in that back left-hand corner, we could see a seam in the brick between the original 1850 box and these post-1924 additions. I think this little bit of an odd bump out back there, and you can see a slight change in the roof pitch. That's an indication to me that that back left corner is even a later addition. And there's another photo which we'll get to, which shows sort of the CMU block there as well. Can we go to the next slide?
A question, CMU meaning what?
Concrete block.
Okay, thank you. Oh yeah, concrete masonry unit, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, and so anyways, picture from the front of the house. You can see the budding structure to the right at 4 Pine Street. Next slide, please. So going a little bit around the right side here, you'll notice that the main entrance to this house, is on the right side, well away from the driveway. And this is one of the things that we're really hoping to change, and I think it's to the benefit of both the folks at Six Pine and the abutting property. You can see that they're, right on top of each other. And I think it's, would be an added benefit in terms of privacy to relocate that entrance. Those two windows in the front of the main box, I do think they're in their original locations, original openings. Next slide, please. So going a little bit around to the right, you see the two windows in front, which I think are original. Those two immediately on the right side are also what I think are original openings. The two beyond that to the left of the door are original as well. From this viewpoint, out of those 6 windows that we're seeing, we're planning to retain 5 of them and also remove that front door. So here you also see sort of a side L addition. Again, this is post 1924. The section on the back with the dish, we're proposing to remove almost in its entirety, but this section with this shed roof, we are planning to work with some of it. Next slide, please. So the photo from the rear of the property, immediately in the foreground, this is a freestanding shed, which we're planning to remove. Right below that sort of odd, what looks like a very narrow French casement window, you get a little bit of a glimpse of the concrete block foundation there, which is different from anything else on the rest of the structure. That's what indicates to me that this particular component is even probably the most recent addition to this structure. And you can actually see it sort of the roof bend a little bit there as well. So they didn't do a particularly good job of constructing that. There's also a concrete block chimney there, and that goes into this sort of ad hoc addition that we're planning to remove. Next slide.
Before we leave this slide, quick question. Could you comment on that notch on the left side of the roof there? What's going on with that?
Notch on the left side of the roof.
Of the main house.
The side addition's gone.
Oh, at the top,
Yeah.
where it sort of changes pitch.
Yes.
So basically that's if we can go to the previous slide, slide 13, Caitlin. So basically that's the rear half of this sort of shed roof. And
okay.
And slide 14, if we can go back to that again.
All right.
Yeah,
thank
so
you.
that, they're basically, coplanar in the back.
Right. All right, thanks.
Next slide, please. This is a proposed site plan. It's quite a large lot. The back half of this lot was acquired and added to this parcel recently. And that is where we, as part of the project, we're planning to put a 2-car garage. You can see up front our new footprint in bold, and if you zoom in a little bit underneath, you can sort of see in a very light, faint gray outline, the footprint that is very, very faint. You can see where that freestanding shed is that we're planning to remove, and also the, existing footprint underneath. Again, the driveway, we're planning to, consistent with what is there now, the driveway is located on the left side as you're facing it. Next slide, please. So these are the existing condition floor plans. As Attorney Mead already mentioned, this is the existing house is 882 square feet. Very, very small. It's one of the smaller structures I've ever worked on. I was terrified when I first dove into this because, the actual width of the main box here is 13 feet. So which means that inside you really have, about 12 feet to work with. And so, it's easy when you're, working with a much larger structure, it's easy to make everything work well. But when you're really dealing with something that is so small like this, you're really fighting for every inch. And so the existing house, I guess it's technically a 1-bedroom. You can see the second floor on the lower left-hand corner, and what we've labeled as a bedroom. I think you could possibly call it a 2-bedroom. I think it would be a stretch to call it a 3, a true, true 3-bedroom house. We are proposing to double the size of the house, nearly 1,600 square feet, as Attorney Mead had already mentioned. In some instances that may appear bad to a board because we're doubling the size, but even though we're doubling the size of this, it still remains the smallest by far, kind of like the smallest house in the street. And in a few slides, we'll show you some examples of some abutting properties. So in the lower right-hand corner, this is the existing basement plan, highlighted in red, the section that we're, planning to remove, in its entirety, some of those sections that we're hoping to keep in place. These are all sort of post-1924 additions. Immediately above that, first floor plan. So those walls, in green, again, those are the post-1924 additions that we are hoping to be able to remove. Next slide, please. So the next 2 slides, show the proposed elevations on the bottom, against the existing elevations at the top of the page. Front right corner is the new front elevation of this house. So the first thing you'll notice is that new front entry, which relocated to the left side of the property. This is a very important component of the project. Like I said, it provides privacy for, these folks at Six Pine and as well as the abutters. Again, trying to preserve those 2 window openings on that front section of the main box. We're hoping to kind of rework all of the existing eave details, hoping to put something back that is more reminiscent of what you would see in 1850. Lower left-hand corner, this is the proposed elevation for, as you're looking at it from the left side, the driveway side. One of the important components of this project is we're introducing sort of a side L addition here. So this is important for 2 reasons. One, it provides us a place to put this new front entry, but also this house is so small that we're not able to do like one of the things that the previous project tonight that you reviewed in terms of being able to sort of set back the new addition, set it back from the face of the existing. And we're not able to do that here because this is so small. Remember, this main box is only 13 feet wide. So this side L addition is helping us to sort of break up the length of the house. Next slide, please. So lower right-hand corner, this is the house that, the back of the house, as you would see from the rear. Essentially what we're doing here architecturally is we're taking that 13-foot box and we are extruding it to the rear of the property. And then we're adding a couple of different bump outs, on the left side, which would actually be on the right side of this drawing. And off to the drawing that's in the lower right-hand corner, off to the left there, that's the side L addition, as you would view the property from the right side. So that shed roof that we're seeing there, that is an existing shed roof that we're hoping to extend slightly towards the back. And in the lower left-hand corner, this is the house as you would see from the right side. And on the top, you could see that there's a little section there between like the lower shed roof and the upper shed roof where we're hoping to kind of infill that. And again, extruding this shed roof to the back. And just so you have an idea, like in the drawing in the lower left-hand corner, you could see where we have masonry at the foundation. So that's representative of what, the existing walls, and the stuff that is in white there, that is intended to be new. Next slide, please. So just to look at, what our proposed 2-car garage is going to look like. Has a little bit of a different character than the house. The details are different, but there are some commonalities between the two. Hoping to have both of them, be the same color and also sort of the same style windows. And that's what's going to sort of tie them together. Next slide, please. So next set of slides is just basically showing us the context. Number 4 Pine Street immediately to the right. Interestingly enough, this is, listed by the city as built in 1850, same age as 6 Pine, completely different architecturally, much larger house. Next slide, please. So first look at the house immediately to the left, which I think is, what's that, 8 Pine? And this is built in about 1870. Next slide, 22. Yeah, 8 Pine Street. Significantly larger house. This is the addition off the left side, which was built about 20 years ago. I think it's pretty clear to me that this must have been kind of like a late Victorian half house at one point in time that has, since been converted. Next slide, please. So look at the 2 properties across the street. Number 7, I think this is a house that was built in the 40s. Number 5, this is a late Victorian, I think it's a multi-family house. What we're seeing there is, pretty significant, not very flattering addition to the right side, which I think was added in the last 15 years or so. Again,
So that wasn't your firm, huh?
No, much, again, much larger than 6 Pine Street. Next slide, please. Just looking up the street towards Marlborough Street there. 6 Pines right on the left there, right beyond the fire hydrant. Next slide, please. Looking towards Plum Island, towards Beacon Ave. It's 2 houses that are across the street, including the Cape, both built in the 40s. Next slide, please. And really our rendering of what, we hope this to look like. And I think this is fairly accurate of kind of accurate representation of our vision of the project. The only thing I think is a little deceptive here, and I think it has to do with the perspective, is that, the garage really appears a little bit closer to the house than it actually is. There's actually 36, feet between the face of that garage and the back of the addition.
A quick question, Scott, on this. This rendering there's a tree right in front of the house at present. Do you have, but I notice it's not in the rendering. So
that's the one thing that is not, we removed the tree for the quality of, basically the quality of the rendering.
But what's going to happen in reality?
George, are you on? Can you chime in on that?
So I'm going to try.
Yes.
Go ahead, George.
So there's a Norway maple on
is that
the.
What it is?
Yes, there are a couple Norway maples on the property line of 8. It's deceiving, but they're pretty close to the property line of 8 and 6, and it is the request of them and me, because it's invasive, to remove the Norway maples.
So I'm going to also add here that the city has an ordinance related to sidewalks and street trees. And so if the Norway maple is on private property, the city doesn't have any control over it. But if it is going to come down, they may want trees planted in the strip in the front.
Well, yeah, so I'll chime in about that. Yes, of course, we're going to obviously consult with, the city tree warden, if one tree is desired.
Yeah,
we'll do it. And then just also, mention too, that as a standard, the sidewalks will be Boston City brick pavers, as all my projects contemplate. So.
Thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to add one other thing. If you could go to the next slide, please. It's just the neighborhood, so you can get an idea of the sizes of the houses in the rest of the neighborhood. In fact, it's not on purpose, but you could barely see this house based upon the size of it. But I wanted to also show this because George has received 9 letters of support from all of the properties that are surrounding this backyard, the one that backs up on Marlborough Street as well as ones across. So the immediate abutters and the ones across the street.
All right. And this is a slight digression, but I just have to ask Attorney Mead. I noticed on your Sanborn maps, this Pearson's conservatories. Did anyone ever figure out what the heck that was?
So I was intrigued by that too. I had actually learned that there was a conservatory, which was a greenhouse. If you want to go back up to the Sanborn map for a minute.
Sorry,
no, at the corner, and it was at the corner of Beacon and Riley. There was a greenery, a nursery there, and I just wonder if this quote conservatory was related to that, right?
Yeah,
it was a greenhouse.
Right.
Actually, it was the subject, not to be too morbid, but it's the subject of the last murder in Newburyport happened in this greenhouse many years ago.
Lovely. Must have been one of those man-eating plants.
And
okay.
That almost looks like, I thought it was a rope walk building behind it. Is that what it was before?
They were all greenhouses, according to the neighbors.
Yeah, these are greenhouses. The rope walks are over off of Bromfield, Bromfield Street on the west side of Bromfield Street.
Yeah. I think the other Sanborn map, I saw that long structure behind the building, and it looked like what those other places with the rope walks would be, but that's interesting. I didn't know about that one. Thank you.
All right. Sorry for that digression, but I saw that Pearson Conservatory. I was just dying to know what the heck that was about. All right. Are you, I don't want to cut you off. Were you completed?
I think we're done, and we'd like to hear what the board has to say, and hope that you make an advisory report that says that the proposed renovations, that certainly, depending on what you define about the significance of the structure, but certainly the proposed renovations do not take away from the historic nature of the neighborhood, which now is very eclectic.
Yeah, as are many of them. Well, so on the panel, I do want to have a brief public comment period. You see if there's any public comment, but before I do, does any of my co-panelists here have any quick question or clarification they would like from either the attorney or the architect? Oh, I saw a hand go up. Chris, did you have a question?
Yeah, thank you. Let's get my hand down here. Yeah, on the garage, the second story, what's the proposed thought on the second story of the garage that's planned?
Right now, it's proposed to be storage.
Okay.
They're looking for extra storage space because of the size of the house.
Correct.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Understood.
And I suspect, would I be correct, Attorney Mead, that they're probably are zoning or similar kinds of restrictions that it can't be a habitable, they can't make it like an apartment or something like that.
Correct.
Well, they can't make it a residence for sure.
Right. Okay, so let me open a quick public comment period. See if anyone out there in the attendees has a public comment to make. Again.
Mr. Chair, I just I apologize. I made a mistake. We have an email from 33 Marlborough Street. It's not actually a letter from them yet. I thought that was a letter. Okay.
Yeah, not a problem. Thank you for clarifying. Okay, and you see, if you're on the Zoom meeting, you see the instructions here. Raise your hand if you'd like to make a comment. Again, *9 if you're on a phone, *6 to mute and unmute. And I do see one hand. Looks like Ms. Nikitish would like to make a public comment, so we'll unmute you on our end and just state your name and address per usual and make your comment, please.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Stephanie Nikitich, 93 High Street. I have, questions and a comment. Could you please ask the applicant about the materials which will be used?
Yeah, we generally do, and I'm sure we'll do that.
Yes,
I know you do. Just I didn't quite hear all of that for the last one, so I just wanted to ask for that. I also know in the plans that there is a masonry chimney which is gone. And that's always a sad thing to see in Newburyport, to see chimneys go. So I don't know if you want to ask about that.
Mhm.
And then to Mr. Sawtell's question about the garage looks so much more fancy than the house because of that window, the dormer and the window arrangement on the second story. So if it's just for storage, I'm wondering if that could be calmed down and made a little bit more in keeping with the simplicity of the original building. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm happy to respond to
Well,
Stephanie.
hang on a second, and we'll give you a chance to respond. I just want to make, I don't think there's any other public comment. Just let me see
Sure.
if there is or isn't, and then I'll be happy to give you an opportunity to respond to that. Don't see any other hands. So let me formally close the public comment period. And now who was that was speaking? Was that who was it that wants to address that?
I think it was George.
Okay. All right. Did you want to go
Yeah.
ahead now?
Yes, I think Stephanie's familiar with my construction and quality work. We're going to be, using wood cedar siding on the house and on the garage, and the windows will be, wood interior, aluminum clad with, SDL appropriate windows. As far as the garage goes, the client, in my last number of projects, I've tried to really shrink them down in size just because of, the ability for them to be affordable, and the cost of construction, and just generally trying to understand that Newburyport is looking for, smaller, type additions and whatnot. So, we built the garage as storage. The client hopes one day that they can potentially afford to put in an office above the garage and have some natural light in it. That is not the case right now, and won't be probably for the next couple of years. But that's why we built the garage, hopefully with the intent that, the second floor up there could be used as some additional space, because they do have a family, and 1,600 square feet, I understand, that is perfectly fine for a lot of people, but it is on the smaller side, and looking for potentially some additional space in the future.
Okay, and on the materials side,
yeah,
sorry.
And I'm sorry, one last thing on the chimney. The chimney as it stands right now is structurally unstable. I'm happy to commit to rebuilding a replica masonry chimney, as I've done for a number of properties in this very instance.
Yeah, that looked like a concrete block chimney, did it not? Is it not?
No, you're talking about
one of
the
them is.
concrete block in the rear.
Oh,
which,
that's the rear
is just
one, right?
Yeah, but it's one that Stephanie is referring to, I assume, is this one in the picture right there. That
yes.
I'm happy to, again, that's not probably even original, but I'm happy to put something that's period back, from a masonry replica standpoint.
And it's Scott Brown, just to piggyback on George's comments. This house does not have an attic, and it doesn't have much of a basement. The existing basement right now is below 6 feet of head height. So, it's really critical that we provide some additional space on the property somewhere for storage.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Brown. Okay. I do have one or two quick questions. Well, then just finish up on the materials. So I think you pretty much said, and this, I'm really addressing this to George Hazeltine, that it sounds like you're saying that as an overall statement that the window, all the vinyl windows are all going to be replaced with the STL windows you described, the wooden interiors and, vinyl exteriors or clad exteriors, does it look like 2/2, correct?
Yes.
And the vinyl siding was going to go, and you'd have wood clapboards and corner
Yes.
boards, etc. Okay. Okay. So yeah, that is good to know. So I'm gonna ask, a quick question, then this is probably a question, well, it could be either you, Mr. Brown, or Scott, or George, that on the, just from a design point of view, would it have been very difficult to have the ridge of that perpendicular L that you proposing on the left side, the east side, would that have been very difficult building wise to have the ridge just be below the current ridge line, so it's, look, it reads more as, as an addition, or you know what I'm saying, it has that
No, not at all, Mr. Chairman. In fact, I mean, I did this because I thought it was the best looking thing. And that side L there matches in width. I think that's 13 feet to match the width of the original box in the front. And I also matched the pitch, of the existing box as well. And but if the commission thinks it's an improvement, I'm not opposed to sort of slightly altering that pitch so it hits below that ridge. But then again, I think it's also important that this is an important component of the project to kind of break up the massing and sort of refocus, bring the eye towards the front of the house.
Yeah, and I have to admit, it looks worse in the flat
Absolutely.
elevations than it does in when you look at it in the rendering. It doesn't. I say, it's far less objectionable, put it that way. Although, before I forget, on this rendering, it shows that little sort of vent in the attic, and I didn't think looked like that didn't show up on the plan, or the elevation rather.
Correct. Yeah. No, we missed it in those two-dimensional elevations, and I think
Okay, so that would be there.
Yeah, there's one there now.
Right.
And I do think it's better with a little something up there.
Okay. All right. So that would remain then.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Let me see if my fellow panelists have a comment. Typically what I do, board, is go around and ask you what you would like the report to say, and I'll scribble as fast as I can so that I can go ahead and then write that up and capture your thoughts on this. You heard my various questions and my one comment about the ridge line there. I don't know. I don't feel real strongly about that. It was just kind of a thought. But so let me just, not in any particular order. You happen to be on top of my list, Andrew. Anything that you think the report to the ZBA that's important that we call out on that?
No, nothing for me.
Okay. How about Mark? How about for you?
No specific comments.
Okay. All right, thank you. Biff, anything from you?
Sure, I'll give you something to scribble down now.
Okay.
No, I think the addition. I think it's interesting. I don't think it needs to go on in the letter, but I think it's interesting that we were, talking about the addition on the last place, about 800 square feet. And
I had a feeling you might mention that.
I did. Sorry, it was interesting that they lined up this way. But I think that this edition is in one of those cases where I've seen several of these tack-on additions in several neighborhoods around Newburyport, with that cinder block sort of thing, and you can tell that it was. Something it was, if this was done in the 30s, right? Is that what we're thinking? 30s or 40s?
The stuff that's tacked on the back, you mean?
Yeah.
Somewhere in there.
Right. So, you have to imagine, you go back in time and what that was, right? And they were doing as best as they could as best they could afford probably to add on to those. So I think there's not a lot of historic value in what's been done there. I think it was probably built sort of temporarily, something it's a stopgap to get them through. So I don't think that there's any objection of removing that. And as far as the addition or the garage in the basically the kind of new property in the rear, I don't think there's anything our board would have any objections to. I mean, I would love to see that whole conservatory built, but that's I don't think that's going to happen. But I don't think there's anything objectionable of that.
Okay.
I think if it kept a little more to the Greek revival look, because I think this is definitely like this is a worker. That's when I saw that long building. That's what I was immediately in my head. I was like, oh, it's a rope walk, and this was a workers' building, and these folks worked over there. But maybe they worked over, in the conservatory. I don't know, but I think keeping to the Greek revival is definitely important, and seeing the details that they're bringing back to the building, I think is more. It does more to improve this than any of the additions would be detrimental, if that makes sense. I think.
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you mean. Yeah, going back to two over two windows and all that.
Yeah, I think that the character they're bringing back to it, and by elongating it and making it almost more of like a super shotgun style house or something, I think that's. I don't think there's anything really objectionable about that, and I do really appreciate the photos that were shared with the context of the neighborhood. I mean, I've been around there and gone up and down the block a couple times myself and checked it out, but it's like to see that, I think, is really helpful for our board and they'll make these decisions. So I just want to just point that out. Thank you, though.
Sure, thank you, Biff. Appreciate it. Chris Sautel, any thoughts from you on anything you think might be important to say in the report?
No, I think a structure that was 850 square feet of living space, I would think would be potentially at risk for being demoed and built all over again. And how this is presented in the rendering, I think it looks very nice. And I think it's more true to this style, as Biff said, of the Greek revival than a lot of other buildings that are actually Greek revival with additions put onto them. 850 square feet, houses like that, kind of few and far between. I actually think there's kitchens in Newburyport bigger than that. So
probably.
Yeah, but I like it. I like the rendering of it. I think it's very, yeah, that's it.
All right, very good. Thanks, Chris. And Mr. Brown, I guess you can take that as a compliment. I think who have we now? Joe Morgan, we haven't heard from you. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I kind of agree what Chris was just saying. Trying to, I mean, first of all, it really is amazing that it was such a rudimentary structure and so small. I don't see how to preserve that. I mean, how do you capture any kind of historical relevance that contains? Was it worker housing? What kind of people lived there, and how did it fit into the neighborhood at the time that it was built? Now, clearly, these other houses are, I think, what we call intrusive nowadays, because they've been they're new additions, or they've been so modified that they don't, or changed or added onto, they no longer reflect what the original historical fabric of the neighborhood was. And I think this is just going to continue that trend. I don't think there's any way to really preserve the diminutive scale of the structure, which is really the interest, I think, of the original structure. I think the best we can get, I think, I mean, I don't know what we could possibly bargain for, other than maintaining some of those dimensional reference points. The 13 foot, I think, is great that you're able to keep that. And I think that Scott Brown's his gesture to sort of stop your eye on the original scale of the building by making the perpendicular projection, the side entrance there, that L, I think is useful, and I think it does work. I think that someone could object, well, you're compromising the original roof line and ridge, which is really just a straight shotgun type structure, by adding the L. But on the other hand, if you didn't do this, your eye would be drawn back along the ridge on a much larger structure, which would be very deceptive. I mean, relative to if we admit that the goal here is to preserve some dimensional quality of the original.
I think
I find this to be a real conundrum. I don't know how to respond to it, because it's really beyond preservation at this point. It's just like, and the original structure doesn't have really much to recommend it, other than those dimensional profiles. So anyway, that's what I have to say. Thanks.
Yeah, I was just picturing, looking at this rendering, picturing it without that little L, which, by the way, is not all that big. It's only, there's a doorway there, so what's it, maybe 4 or 5 feet or so. It's not huge, but I think I agree with you that it kind of plays an important role to avoid having this, you know, 2-story greenhouse shaped thing, right? Just this long, narrow, 13-foot wide thing that really would be kind of an oddball kind of thing. Anyway, just let me finish this one note here. Okay, I think I got everybody. Let's see, Joe, Chris, Biff, Andrew. Yeah, I think I got everybody. Any last comments? If not, what I usually do is ask for a motion to authorize the chair to take these comments you all have made and draft a report. What I usually do, let me ask Attorney Mead, do you know when you go before the ZBA?
It's the second meeting in May, because, you know, we're not allowed to file with them for 30 days after we file with you. So, but if you could give us your comments sooner than that, then we would want to make sure that if we needed to update the plans to include any of your comments, we would do that.
Yeah, what I was going to suggest, and you're probably familiar with this from prior reports, is that between this meeting and the very next one, which, let me open a calendar here, that would be May. Where are we? Let's see, the May 11th. Is that correct, Caitlin? Next meeting should be May 11th.
Yep, that's right.
So I would have the board review the draft and approve it, or make any necessary changes on that. So the latest you'd have it was around that time frame. I certainly don't have any objection to sharing the draft, as long as it's understood that you know, it is not officially approved yet draft.
That would be great. Thank you. And that time frame works. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So is there a motion to authorize the chair, that would be me, to draft a report encompassing these comments?
So move. Mark Sandron.
Okay,
Seconded, Joe Morgan.
Okay, thank you, Mark and Joe. So let's see, Andrew, your vote?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. Biff Baus?
Yes.
Okay, Mark Central?
Yes.
Okay, Joe?
Yes.
Okay. Chris Sautel?
Yes.
Okay, I abstain. but I don't want to be accused of giving myself work to do. Anyway, okay, so I will get that drafted, and what I usually do is send it to you guys in advance of the meeting, so that you have a chance to take a look at it, and we can finalize it at our next meeting. Very good. Well, thank you, Mr. Brown. Thank you, George.
Thank you, members.
Yeah, I'm blanking on your last name. I'm sorry, Hazeltine, right?
George Hazeltine. Yep.
Right. Is that Hazeltine? Is that how you pronounce it?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. And Attorney Mead, thank you for your time. I think you're all set for now.
Thank you very much. We appreciate
Thank you
your
very
time
much.
this evening.
Great. Have a good night.
Bye-bye.
Good night. Now, you folks that are here and the board we're not quite done. As far as general business, the only updates I have is that I did meet with a new applicant who wants to join the board. He would be a alternate. His name is Alan Marquis. Very interesting fellow. We had a nice sit and chat at the coffee factory, and we'll find out more about Alan in the future. I think his application is wending its way somewhere through the process, and I think he'll be an interesting addition to the board. And also a reminder that May 4th, for those of you who want to show up, I will plan to be there for the City Hall, in the City Hall auditorium for the, I think of it almost as a job fair for the city boards and commissions. So we just have, everyone has a, one of those folding tables, and there are quite a few of them. They're like something like 21 boards or something like that. Yeah. So should be an interesting evening. And so I encourage you all to get that on your calendar. Now, there were minutes from the 4th of April. That was our last meeting to be approved. I hope you've had a chance to review them. Gretchen did a good job, especially where we had that one. You might have seen that when I published the decisions and so forth, I had to quickly, minutes later, do an update because I forgot that there was a condition on the approval of one of the plans where we wanted to make sure that they stuck to their plan on the quality of the windows and so on. So thank you, Gretchen, for doing a good job of capturing all of that. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from the 4th of April? Hello? No one wants to approve the minutes from April 4th?
So moved.
Oh, thank you, Joe. I was wondering what's going on there. All right, is there a second for that?
Second.
Didn't quite catch who that was.
It's Chris.
Okay, thank you, Chris.
Chris here, sorry.
Yep, yeah, I got it. Now, I think, Mark, you can recuse yourself from this. I don't think you were here on the 4th. Is that correct? Okay.
That is
I
correct.
wasn't, and I wasn't there
Yes,
either.
right. Okay, so we'll start with Biff Baus. Your vote on the approval of the minutes?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. Chris Fay is not here tonight. Joe Morgan?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Sawtell?
Yes.
You don't have to sound so tired and bored about it, Chris. Okay, the chair votes yes, which is a good thing because otherwise we wouldn't have enough votes to pass it. So the only thing remaining on my agenda is adjournment. So unless somebody has something they want to, oh, I see a hand. Chris, did you have something to say?
Yeah, Glenn, I had a question. Is there a reason why people that come before the Historic Commission, especially on webinars, have the cameras off? I think it would be kind of a thing to see who we're actually talking with. It's just a thought.
Okay, well, the short answer is I think there is a reason. Whether it's valid or not is another question, of course. Caitlin, I think you could probably address that. I don't know if it's anything that's been talked about changing. I think correct me if I'm wrong, Caitlin, that it was originally set up as a bandwidth kind of thing, not to take up, to keep the Zoom meeting functioning well and thoroughly, especially if there were a lot of attendees. Can you add anything to that?
No, that's exactly right, Glenn. That's how we've been for all of our boards since the start of the pandemic. But we could always try and revisit it. And then if there are, bandwidth issues, we could just have the applicants turn their cameras off. We could try that if you all would like to.
Yeah.
As a longtime IT professional, it's definitely advisable. I think all of us should be in the practice if we're not speaking or need to be on camera to turn them off, because it does actually affect the overall output, the video and audio quality for everyone when you do these things. So in the IT world, that's generally the practice is to turn off the the cameras unless you're speaking or need to be seen.
Well, I think it's more true of the audio, Biff, in the sense that I know when
Well,
if you
The
were in
video
an
is
app,
just a real draw on the broad,
yep,
on the visual data.
no, I'm not disputing that. What I was going to say is that for the people viewing this Zoom meeting, they don't see if your display is anything like mine, like I see all your guys' videos all the time, pretty much, but the Zoom broadcast that goes out does not have that. It only has the video of whoever happens to be speaking at the time. So it's not pumping out all that data for all the all of us all the time, so to speak.
But
But
yeah,
you're
but
right, it is.
it'll still slow it down for
Yes.
us a little
Yeah.
bit. That's so
Yeah.
it's just
Yep.
in general and for data and it's
Yep. Yep, it has an impact. Yep, I'm very familiar with some of the IT stuff myself. So, a former manager of a large website. Anyway, well, so that's your answer, Chris. I think that, well, it'd be interesting. There's a counter thought before we leave this topic altogether. I would wonder if some of the applicants would prefer not to have their video going, because I think, for example, like as tonight, for example, you had the attorney and the architects and the owners kind of kibitzing among themselves to see how they could respond to some of our concerns, like on that chimney and so on. It's possible that they might prefer, well, of course they could control it, they could always turn up their video if they want to have a private whatever, so I suppose that's true too. All right, well, we can certainly
adjourn?
What's that?
Can we move to adjourn?
We can. I was just going to say that. Shall I take that as I'm going to take that as
second and a third over
as Mark Sandrone making a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Yeah, I'll second.
Second.
Okay, I think I heard Biff first. Okay, so sorry, your vote, Biff. Actually, I should start with Andrew. Sorry.
Oh,
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, and yours, Biff?
Yes.
Okay, Joe?
Aye.
And Mark, I assume you're yes.
Indeed.
Okay. Chris Sautel?
Yes.
And the chair makes it unanimous, so we are officially adjourned. Thank you all for your time and attention. I appreciate it very much. I know we all have stuff to do, so.
Good night. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you, everyone.
Good night, gents. Bye.
Good night.
Thank you very much, boys.
Okay, good night.
Thanks, Chair.
You're quite welcome.